When my grandmother passed away, it hit me hard. She had always been my safe place. At 32, I was a schoolteacher, and I thought going back to her village would help me feel better. I inherited her cottage, a small, old place filled with memories. I arrived in the village a few weeks later, feeling a mix of sadness and nostalgia. The village looked just like I remembered. Narrow streets and stone houses hugged the sides. The ancient woods stood nearby, shadowy and intimidating. I pulled up to my grandmother's place, a feeling of heaviness settling in my chest. Going inside, I was surrounded by familiar smells that had once comforted me. Now they felt eerie. Sorting through her belongings was hard. I paused often, feeling like I wasn't ready for all of this. Then I found a locked box hidden away in the attic. It was old and dusty. I thought it might hold some interesting trinkets. With a bit of effort, I pried it open. Inside were old journals. The pages were yellowed and worn. I flipped through them, at first getting lost in her neat handwriting. The stories were strange. They talked about women and rituals. I thought they were just local myths or tall tales. I should have stopped reading then, but I couldn't help myself. As I dug deeper, odd things started happening. Shadows flitted in my peripheral vision. I shook my head, thinking I was imagining it. Then I began hearing whispers at night. They echoed through the dark halls, and the atmosphere felt heavy. My heart raced every time I turned a corner. It was like something was lurking. The villagers appeared to avoid me. I would walk into town, and they'd glance away or shush up when I approached. It left me feeling uneasy. Did they know something I didn't? I felt like a stranger in the place I'd once loved. The names in the journals haunted me. What if those women existed in the village? It made me feel like I was being watched. My comfort was slipping away, replaced with dread. I could feel the cottage's history all around me, alive and pulsing. I brushed sleep from my eyes one night. The whispers grew louder. Rustling sounds echoed through the dark. I felt like I was the only one in that house. I closed my eyes, but they wouldn't go away. I wanted to leave, but the journals held me captive. They had answers I needed, or at least I thought they did. Then one night it happened. A knock echoed through the silence. I jumped up, heart racing. I opened the door slowly, peering into the void of darkness. There was nothing there, just shadows. I stood frozen, feeling the cool breeze brush against my skin. Then I heard the voice, soft and chilling. It whispered, "You shouldn't have read them." My breath caught in my throat. The words hung in the air as I stared into the black. I don't know what I'll do next, but I can't go back now. The next morning I woke up feeling groggy. I wasn't sure if the whispers had lingered in my dreams, or if I had truly heard them.
I rubbed my eyes and took a deep breath, determined to push through the fear. I decided to revisit the journals. Maybe understanding their contents could help me make sense of the strange happenings. As I sat at the old wooden table, I flipped through the pages again. The delicate handwriting chronicled odd festivals and gatherings. It mentioned women who had powers, gifts of healing or knowledge. The more I read, the more it felt real. But what did it mean? Then I noticed something new, a drawing tucked between the pages. It looked like a map of the village, but that wasn't what struck me. There were markings in a pattern I didn't recognize. They formed a shape, like a circle with symbols around it. My heart beat faster. Was this connected to the rituals in the journals? I felt a pull to decipher the map. Maybe I could find out what my grandmother knew. I tucked it away and made my way outside, determined to explore. As I walked through the crisp morning air, the village felt different, quieter. The villagers went about their routines, but they didn't meet my eyes. One woman, a baker, glanced at me, her expression tight. It filled me with dread. What did they know? Pushing those thoughts aside, I turned toward the woods. The trees stood tall against the bright sky, but they felt imposing. As I wandered further in, I searched for the markings from the map. I felt drawn to a clearing. Gathering my courage, I stepped further into the trees. Suddenly, the air shifted. It became still, and a feeling of being watched washed over me. I halted, squinting through the shadows. Then I saw it, a stone circle, partially hidden by underbrush, matching the shape from the drawing. My heart raced. Was this real? I approached cautiously, my fingers trembling as they grazed over the cool stones. Strange symbols were carved into them, just like those in the journal. I felt a jolt of recognition. Something ancient lingered here. I glanced over my shoulder, half expecting someone to leap from the trees. That's when I noticed movement.
A figure stood at the edge of the clearing, shrouded in shadows. Fear knotted my stomach. I couldn't discern who they were, but there was something familiar about the outline. "Who's there?" I called, my voice shaky. The figure stepped forward, and my breath caught. It was another woman, her eyes locked on me. She looked weathered but fierce. "You need to leave," she warned, her voice low and urgent. "You don't belong here." And just like that, I felt a new surge of doubt. Was I in over my head? I started to back up slowly, but the shadows behind her seemed to deepen. "Wait," I called out, but she turned and disappeared into the woods. Panic rose within me. I had to know more, but the truth felt dangerously close. As I fled back toward the cottage, my mind raced. Who was she? What could she tell me? And most importantly, what had I stumbled into? I stumbled out of the woods, my heart still pounding.
The cottage felt like a safe haven, yet I was still shaken by the encounter. My hands worked quickly to unseal the map of the village, desperate for answers. I spread it on the table, trying to calm my trembling fingers. The symbols circled the stone site I had found, but they didn't make sense. Some resembled those in the journals, while others were foreign. I traced the lines, willing a connection to surface. My mind flashed back to the woman's fierce eyes. What did she want? And why did she tell me to leave? The sun started to dip, casting long shadows in the room. The quiet felt heavy. With every creak of the wooden floor, I felt the weight of secrets. I wanted to reach out to the villagers, but they had been so distant. Were they afraid, or were they hiding something? Just then, a soft knock at the door surprised me. I froze. Was it the woman from the woods? I hesitated, heart racing again. I slowly approached the door and peered through the small window. A young girl stood there, her blonde hair tied into two messy pigtails. She looked harmless enough, but I remembered the unnerving atmosphere of the village. "Can I help you?" I called out, my voice steady despite the tension. "My mama sent me," she said, glancing around. "She wants to know if you're all right." I opened the door just a crack. "I'm fine, just exploring." She shifted her feet, clearly ready to run back home. "People don't like it when strangers linger. They want you to go." Her words echoed the warning I had received earlier. Something cold settled in my stomach. Do they know what I'm doing?" The girl shrugged. "They never talk much about things like you." Things like me. The air felt thick, and I didn't want to press her further. "Thanks for checking on me. I'll be careful," I replied, and she quickly scurried away, back toward the path. Alone again, I sat back at the table, staring at the map and the journal. I needed to find answers, and I sensed the answer lay in the woods. But fear clawed at me. What if I encountered the woman again? What if I didn't come back? Suddenly, I heard the faint sound of whispers. I glanced around, but I was alone in the cottage. It was just wind. Just the wind. I pressed my palms against my temples, trying to drown out the unwanted noise. As the whispers faded, I realized I was losing track of time. The sun had dipped further, and shadows danced outside. I knew what I had to do. I had to return to that stone circle. There was something there I needed to understand. Maybe it would reveal why the villagers were so wary of me. With mounting urgency, I grabbed the map and tucked it away. But as I stood to leave, the whispers burst back to life, louder now, ringing in my ears. "Don't go back," they warned. Ignoring them, I stepped outside into the growing darkness. Each step fueled my determination, driven by the hope that answers awaited me in the woods.
But as I approached the tree line, I halted. A faint figure stood in the distance, eerily silhouetted against the last rays of light. And then everything went dark. I blinked, disoriented in the sudden absence of light. Panic surged through me. Had I just passed out? I reached out, but there was nothing. No walls, no trees, just a weightlessness. My breath quickened. Then a shimmer flickered in the dark, and I heard the soft rustle of leaves, like distant whispers. "Hello?" I called out, my voice sounding small in the void. No reply came, just the whispers growing louder. Words I couldn't make out wrapped around me like a vine, tightening and curling until I gasped. I stumbled forward, desperate to find solid ground. My foot collided with something sharp, a stone. I fell to my knees, pain shooting through me, but I welcomed the sensation. It grounded me. I was somewhere. I had to be. Then the darkness peeled back, revealing the stone circle ahead. The moonlight poured down, illuminating symbols etched into the rocks. They pulsed faintly, almost breathing. The air thrummed with energy. I blinked again, and a figure emerged. It was her, the woman from the woods. Only now she seemed less threatening, more an ethereal protector. "You came," she said, her voice melodic but firm. "You shouldn't have." "Why?" I stammered, confusion spreading in my gut. "What's happening? Who are you?" A flash of sorrow crossed her face,
and for a moment I felt her pain like a distant echo. The village is bound by forces you don't understand. You wander in, curious, while they cage the truth. The truth. My chest tightened. This wasn't just about me. It was about the village, about the whispers, the symbols, everything. What truth? I pressed, stepping toward her. Every symbol here tells a story, but it's not meant for outsiders. To unveil it could mean chaos. You must leave. No, determination coursed through me. I can't. I need to know. Her expression shifted to one of regret. You've seen enough. They watch. They know your presence, and their patience wears thin. She pointed to the shadows beyond the stone circle. You must go now. Fear gripped me. I turned toward the village's silhouette in the distance, feeling its weight bearing down through the trees. What do you mean they know? Before she could answer, the shadows elongated, stretching towards me like tendrils reaching for warmth. I felt the air crackle, energy shifting. Suddenly, from behind me, a chorus of whispers erupted, voices I didn't recognize, chanting, angry, demanding. The woman's eyes widened. Run! I didn't need to be told twice. I darted into the woods, branches whipping past me as I fled, the darkness swallowing me whole. The whispers followed, rising in a raucous clamor. Panic surged as I ran, the village looming ahead, but the feeling of being pursued was palpable. Then a light flickered, breaking through the trees. I veered off the path straight toward it.
As I burst into the clearing, my eyes widened. It was a familiar sight, the old well where I had first seen the village. But something was wrong. The ground shook slightly, and the air felt heavier, like the past itself was calling me back. And that's when I saw it. A figure hovered above the well, shrouded in mist, beckoning me with a bony finger. My heart stopped. How had they found me? I stood frozen, staring at the figure. The mist obscured it, but there was no mistaking that call. It felt like an invitation and a warning all at once. The whispers from the shadows seemed to shift closer, a wall of sound closing in on me. I was trapped. "Who are you?" I shouted, my voice barely above a whisper. The figure leaned forward, and for the briefest moment I saw a face, gaunt and hollow, with eyes that held centuries of secrets. My stomach churned. "Come closer," it croaked, the voice raspy and chilling, echoing in the still night. I didn't want to move. My instincts screamed at me to turn and run, but the curiosity burned brighter. "What do you want?" I pressed, my voice trembling. The figure gestured again, that bony finger moving in a slow arc, urging me forward. "To know the truth." A chill ran down my spine. Could it really be offering answers? I took a cautious step closer, my breath hitching as the mist thickened. "Who sent you?" I asked, my heart pounding. "Is it the villagers? Do they know I'm here?" The figure paused, tilting its head, as if considering my question. Then it spoke again, each word dragging out like nails on stone. "Their shadows reach beyond these walls. They seek. They wait. You must—" Before it could finish, a roar of whispers erupted from the woods, drowning out everything else. The villagers' voices were angry now, frantic and desperate. I could sense their frustration ripping through the air, dark and thick. "Leave!" The ethereal woman's voice echoed in my mind. She had warned me, but it was too late. The well began to tremble, as if responding to the escalating chaos around me. The figure above the well leaned further out, its misty form blending with the shadows creeping in. "You must choose," it hissed. "The well's truth or the village's lie." I felt the weight of those words settle in my chest. What truth could this well possibly hold? Was it worth the danger I faced from the growing anger of the villagers? I glanced back toward the trees, the whispered threats just beyond the edge of the clearing. Suddenly, something snapped in the shadows, and the air felt electric. I turned back to the figure, desperate. What choice? What does it mean? "It reveals what binds them." Then, without warning, the figure began to dissolve into the mist, leaving behind only a lingering chill in the air. Panic surged again. The whispers were louder now, urgent, demanding. I glanced over my shoulder. The shadows seemed to pulse, and I could almost make out forms shifting just outside the clearing. They were coming for me. I needed to decide. I took a deep breath, inching toward the well. The village felt distant, but those whispers were closing in too fast. I reached the edge, the well's surface rippling like water. Just as I leaned in for a better look, everything went dark. The ground beneath me trembled again, and I felt myself being pulled down, deep into the unknown. And then, Silence. I woke up disoriented, the world spinning around me. It took a moment for my eyes to adjust to the faint light filtering in from above. I was lying on cool stone, my body aching, the smell of dampness and earth overwhelming. Where was I? I pushed myself up and took a look around. I was in a small underground chamber. Water dripped from the ceiling, and the walls were slick with moss. A chilling realization hit me. I was at the bottom of the well. I could feel the air thick with something ancient, something alive. Then I heard a noise. It was faint, but it sent a shiver down my spine. Scratching, like nails against stone. I froze, listening intently. The sound got closer. Panic gripped me. "Hello?" I shouted into the darkness. My voice echoed back, but no one responded. I took a breath and tried to calm myself. There had to be a way out. I stood up slowly, trying to ignore the growing sounds around me. A flicker of movement caught my eye. Shadows danced along the walls, and deep down I felt a sense of urgency curling in my gut. I shuffled toward the noise, my heart racing. The chamber was too small, too constricted. I could barely see anything, but I could feel the air growing heavier, charged with a strange energy. Then I stumbled across something cold and hard on the ground. I bent down, fingers tracing it. A small stone tablet. I could barely make out inscriptions carved into its surface. They looked old, ancient. "What binds them?" the figure had said. Was this it? Was this what held the village in its grasp? I scrambled to shift the tablet into the waning light. The symbols began to form shapes in my mind, but they slipped away before I could grasp them fully. The noises grew louder, faster. I stood, heart pounding against my ribs. I couldn't stay here. I had to find a way out. "Please, let me go," I shouted, my voice catching on desperation. The shadow shifted again, and a shape emerged from the darkness ahead of me. It was another figure, but this one was different, more human, less ethereal. Deep-set eyes stared back, filled with a strange kind of recognition. "Are you here to save me, or to trap me?" I croaked, my throat dry with fear. The figure stepped closer, and I could make out features, a face that seemed familiar. "You shouldn't have come here," it hissed, its voice chilling. "They will not let you leave." My mind raced. Who was this person? Were they part of the group from the village? Were they linked to the dark whispers? Feeling the weight of my decision press down on me, I had to figure this out, and fast. "What do you mean? Who are they?" My voice trembled, but I needed answers. They just stared back, the shadows wrapping tightly around their form. "You'll find out soon enough," the figure whispered, glancing over their shoulder nervously. And suddenly, the whispers from outside surged, a cacophony of voices rising, chanting an ominous promise. I turned to where I thought the exit must be, dread pooling in my stomach. Then everything around me shifted, the world blurring. "You must choose," I heard the figure echo vaguely, but the sounds faded into a roar. In that moment, I realized the truth. I had to escape, but escape to where? Then, like a beacon in the fog, I saw a light piercing through the shadows just ahead. I took a step toward the light, my legs shaky but driven by a desperate need to escape the chaos behind me. The glow flickered, illuminating my path and revealing small stones jutting from the damp floor. I moved carefully, not wanting to trip or draw any more attention to myself. As I got closer, I could see it was a narrow opening, just wide enough for me to squeeze through. The chanting grew louder, echoing ominously off the walls. "They will not let you leave." The figure's words haunted me. Just as I reached the opening, a sudden rush of wind slammed against me, pushing me back. Cold sweat broke out on my forehead. My heart raced. Something was blocking my escape. I braced myself and pushed against the pressure. My mind raced through every option, every escape plan. In the dim light, I could see shapes swirling around me, indistinct forms caught in a dance that could only be described as menacing. Then, with a final surge of effort, I broke through the opening. Light flooded my senses as I stumbled into a narrow corridor lined with rough-hewn stones, the air fresher, less oppressive. But the darkness still pulsed behind me, and I could feel the eyes of something unseen watching. I took deep breaths, trying to steady myself. The corridor stretched ahead, the growing light encouraging me to move forward. My instincts screamed at me not to stop, but the weight of uncertainty pressed down on me. That's when I heard a voice, soft yet clear. "Help me." My heart dropped. I turned, scanning the shadows behind me. The well had given way to more tunnels, a labyrinth beneath the village. The voice came again, but this time it was filled with pain.
Please, don't leave me. Against my better judgment, I hesitated. Who are you? I called into the darkness, my voice wavering. Just someone trapped like you, the voice replied, its tone filled with despair. I have waited for so long. You can save me. But save who? The figure I had just seen, or another soul lost to this place? As I stood torn between fear and curiosity, I felt a sharp pull in my gut, a deep knowing that I had stumbled into something much bigger than myself. The corridor began to shimmer, and I could see the outline of a figure in the distance.
They stepped forward, and something about them felt almost familiar. My heart hammered, a mixture of dread and a strange sense of recognition. "Trust me," the figure said gently. "If we can work together, we might break the hold of them." I felt the thin threads of fate twisting around me, binding me to both the escape route and the person calling for help. I could sense that making a choice now could change everything. The shadows grew restless behind me, and the narrator of that ominous chant grew louder, drowning out all thought. I had to act and make a choice. Either I would face the mystifying revelation of this figure, or I would scramble toward the exit and unknown sanctuary. But then, just as I gathered my courage, the corridor shook violently. The shadows surged, merging into a single pulse. "Go now," the familiar voice shouted, and with that final cry, I felt the ground shift beneath my feet. In that chaotic moment, the corridors shifted once more, and I found myself falling. I landed hard, the breath knocked out of me. I lay still for a moment, listening. The echoes of my descent faded into silence. I forced myself to sit up. I was in another room, just as dark but larger, with stone walls that towered over me. My heart pounded, the remnants of fear still coursing through my veins. The familiar voice was gone. "Where are you?" I whispered softly, hoping for a response. Nothing. The darkness felt heavy, almost oppressive, and I quickly scanned my surroundings again. To my left, a narrow beam of light crept through a crack in the wall. I dragged myself toward it, using the cool stone for support. My fingers brushed against rough surface as I pulled myself to my feet. Every step felt like I was walking on unstable ground, untrustworthy. As I neared the light, I noticed something else. Scattered across the floor were small, carved stones adorned with strange symbols. I knelt to inspect them, tracing my fingers over the bizarre markings. They felt warm against my skin, pulsing with a quiet energy. "What are you?" I murmured, unsure if they were a warning or a guide. Suddenly, I heard it again, the chant, louder this time. It seeped through the walls, wrapping around me like a suffocating shroud. Panic surged. I looked back but saw nothing but shadows swirling at the edges of my vision. I turned toward the beam of light, my only source of hope. It beckoned me, a whisper of safety. But as I approached the crack, my gut twisted again. Was this a way out, or another trap? The shadows swirled again, and a low growl vibrated through the air. My instincts kicked in, and I moved faster. I squeezed through the crack, pushing against the stone with all my might, fear driving me forward. My body protested, but I wouldn't let it stop me. Emerging on the other side, I stumbled into another corridor. The dim light flickered from above, revealing shimmering blue stones embedded in the ceiling. I felt a chill sweep through me. I had no idea where I was, but I was sure I was further from safety. Then I saw him, a figure standing at the far end of the corridor, just like the one from before. He was tall, cloaked in shadows, with eyes that glinted intensely in the half-light. "You came," he said, voice smooth yet edged with something unplaceable. "I knew you would find me." "Who are you?" I asked, my voice cutting through the stillness. He stepped closer, the shadows shifting around him. "I am no one and everyone," he replied cryptically. "But we need you. They are close." My heart raced as I took a step back. "Who are they?" I demanded, uncertainty gripping me tighter than before. "They are the reason we are trapped," he said, gesturing toward the darkness behind him. "They feed on fear, on the lost. But if you join me, we can fight back." Before I could respond, a loud crash echoed through the corridor. The walls shook, and I felt the ground tremble beneath me. I turned, instinctively looking for an exit. There was no time to think. "I will show you," he urged, as shadows slithered closer. "But you must trust me." I didn't know if I could trust him, but I had little choice.
The darkness was closing in, and I could feel its cold breath on my neck. "All right," I said, drawing in a breath. "Let's see what we can do." But as I moved forward, ready to face whatever came next, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The darkness wasn't done with me yet. I followed the figure further into the corridor, the shadows thinning slightly as we moved. He led the way with purpose, barely glancing back. Each step I took felt heavier, as if the air around me was thickening, pressing down on my chest. The low growl from before faded, but an uneasy silence settled in its place. "What do you want from me?" I finally asked. My voice sounded small in the vastness of the corridor. "Your strength," he replied, stopping for a moment. "You possess a spirit they cannot comprehend. We need that to escape." His words both intrigued and terrified me. I had no idea what strength I could possibly offer, but I nodded, trying to keep pace with him. As we walked, strange flickering shadows danced along the walls. Occasionally, I caught glimpses of faces stretched in silent screams, or eyes wide with terror. The sight made my stomach churn. "What are they?" I asked, horrified. "They are the trapped," he said, glancing back at me. "The ones who lost hope. If we do not act, you will join them." A chill gripped me. I didn't want to be a part of that. I quickened my pace, moving closer to him. "What's the plan? How do we fight them?" "First we will find the Heartstone," he said, urgency coating his words. "It is the source of their power. We can use it against them." I nodded, though I had no idea where we would find it. Just then, a loud crash echoed again, echoing through the hall. This time, the sound felt closer, more immediate. I felt a jolt of panic surge inside me.
"Keep moving," he urged, quickening his steps. The shadows stirred as if they were alive, creeping closer. I followed, fear gripping me tighter with each echoing footfall. Then, through the dim light, I spotted a doorway to my left, slightly ajar. I pointed. "What about there?" He hesitated. "We don't have time." "Please," I pleaded, my breath hitching. "We need to hide." Without waiting for his response, I darted through the doorway. The space inside was cramped and smelled of damp stone. With my heart racing, I pressed myself against the wall, desperate for cover. He slipped in after me, closing the door softly. We stood in darkness, the only sound our hurried breaths. I could feel the walls vibrating, but whether it was from the shadowy creatures or something else, I couldn't tell. Anxiety gnawed at me. "That was too close," I whispered, my voice shaking. "Hold on," he said, scanning the small room. "There's a map here. We can find the Heartstone." His fingers brushed against something smooth. I squinted as he pulled out a worn parchment. The glow of blue stones from the corridor seeped in around the edges, illuminating strange symbols and paths. As he studied it, I strained to listen for any sign of danger. Suddenly, a low voice broke the silence. "Welcome, little one." It came from right outside the door. My blood ran cold. Someone, or something, was out there. My heart raced as I pressed myself against the cool stone wall, straining to hear through the muffled voice ringing in the darkness. "Welcome, little one." It echoed softly, and a wave of dread washed over me. It wasn't just a voice. It bore a familiarity that sent chills down my spine. I glanced at the figure beside me. His face, barely visible in the dim light, was etched with concern. "We need to stay silent," he whispered, urgency clawing at his tone. I nodded, but part of me felt that whatever was outside the door already knew we were here. The soft, scraping sounds of footsteps advanced closer, stopping just outside our hiding place. "So brave, so curious," the voice crooned, almost playfully. "You think you can escape?" A tremor of fear shot through me. I held my breath, waiting for the inevitable. I felt the figure beside me tense, ready to act. The door rattled slightly, and for a moment, I feared it might burst open. "What do you want?" I found myself whispering into the darkness, surprising myself with the intensity of my question. There was a pause, and then laughter, dark and chilling, seeped in through the cracks. "Ah, little one, you hold something precious, don't you? Knowledge is a heavy burden," it said, and I could hear it moving away from the door. My heart sank. It was leaving. "Now," he hissed, and without thinking, I slipped from my spot. He followed, and I dashed toward the farthest corner of the cramped space, drawn to an unlit passageway on the opposite side. "Over here," I said, my voice a harsh whisper. Fear propelled us forward, and we ducked into the passage just as I heard the voice call out again, echoing into the shadows. "You cannot escape the truth of what you seek." As we moved deeper into the narrow corridor, the shadows thickened around us. It felt alive, shifting with the weight of the repeated whispers and distant chant that had haunted me. My heart was a steady drumbeat of panic. "What was that thing?" I asked, panting quietly as we navigated the tunnel. "Do you know?" "It's one of them, sent to discourage wanderers. They're guardians of the Heartstone, and they thrive on fear," he explained, urgency edging his voice. "We have to reach it before they sense us." Suddenly, he skidded to a halt. In front of us, the passage opened into a larger chamber, illuminated by a soft, pulsating light. My breath got in my throat as I stepped into the room. At the center was a stone pedestal, atop which rested a crystalline orb. It shimmered with a captivating glow, swirling hues of deep blue and green. "The Heartstone," he breathed, awe mixed with desperation as he took a step closer. "Wait," I cautioned, sensing the shadows closing in around us. "What happens if we get too close?" He turned to me, eyes blazing with determination. "It holds power. The villagers can't wield it, but if we can harness it, we can break the cycle." I hesitated, my instincts screaming at me not to trust this. But what if it's a trap? "Then we find out together. We must trust each other now," he urged, his voice steady but firm. There was sincerity in his tone, and against all reason, I felt a shiver of trust spark within me. We stepped forward, and as I reached for the glowing orb, the whispers returned, rising like a tide, almost deafening. "No, leave it, don't touch," they warned, but the warmth of the stone felt inviting against my fingertips. Suddenly, the shadows surged forward, forming figures against the walls, their faces twisted in anger. "You dare defy us," echoed the voice from earlier, now a cacophony of threats that reverberated through the chamber. "You will not take it." Panic seized me again as I pulled back, heart hammering. The figure beside me grasped my arm, grounding me as he faced the encroaching darkness. "Focus. We need to channel its energy." "How?" I shouted over the growing chaos, my voice trembling with fear. "Trust yourself," he urged. "The Heartstone reveals truths. Channel your intent." Drawing in a breath, I placed my palm against the cold surface of the stone. In that moment, I recalled the village, the whispers, the oppression. All the fear that surrounded me was rooted in the truth they wanted to hide. I closed my eyes and thought of freedom, my own, of breaking cycles. "I seek truth," I murmured. "I want to break the darkness." The orb began to pulse faster, responding to my words, sending waves of energy through my hand and up my arm. The shadows screeched, retreating momentarily, flashes of fear sparking in their beady eyes.
"This is it! Keep going!" he shouted, and I focused harder. I could feel the heat rising inside the orb, filling the chamber with a blinding light. All at once the room exploded with sound. Howls and cries erupted from the depths of the darkness as the shadows writhed and twisted. The light swallowed everything. I fought back the fear threatening to consume me, but just then I felt an overwhelming force surge, as if the shadows were pulling me apart. I opened my eyes to see dark tendrils reaching out, trying to reclaim the darkness they lost. And just as quickly as it began, everything went black. I gasped as I found myself lying on damp earth, the musty scent of leaves invading my senses. I blinked, disoriented, and everything felt strangely muted. The whispering had turned to silence. Where was I? As I pulled myself upright, I found myself back in the woods, the moon casting a pale light between the trees. But it felt different now. The air was lighter. I stood on shaky legs, unsure of where to go next. Panic bubbled beneath my skin. Had it all been a dream? I looked around, absently brushing dirt from my clothes. The path was clear ahead. The village lay down the road, yet everything about it seemed distant now. The whispers were gone, replaced by an unsettling silence that beckoned me to explore. But lurking behind those memories were the faces of the villagers, their eyes averted, and the voices of all I encountered echoing in my mind. I still didn't understand everything. I moved toward the village, but uncertainty weighed heavily on me. Had we defeated the darkness? The welcoming silence made me uneasy. As I crossed the threshold, I noticed a young girl watching from a distance, her eyes wide. I recognized her, the baker's daughter. "Are you back?" she asked, curiosity mingled with wariness. "I think so," I replied, though my heart fluttered with uncertainty. "What happened?" "Things feel different," she said softly, an edge of hope sparking in her voice. "The shadows, they've lifted." But beneath her words, I felt a lingering unease. What had truly happened while I was gone? And who would still hold the knowledge of what transpired in the dark? I walked away from her gaze, the village before me. I would need answers, answers I might never receive.
and deep down inside, I knew the shadows were not entirely gone. They could return, alive in whispers, waiting for the right opportunity. With every step, the lingering questions tugged at my heart, promising that this was not the end. Rather, it was merely a moment in an enduring cycle. I could feel it. The truth might have escaped the shadows, but it was far from over. As I moved further into the village, the weight of everything was heavy, yet I felt ready to face whatever was to come next, even if the truth remained a cruel mystery.